Hey everyone! I'd like to record this live instead of my usual scripted intro so you can get a sense for where my current speaking ability is at. I wouldn't say I have a debilitating speech impediment, but compared to a lot of people I know, I definitely struggle to speak clearly. If I'm not thinking about it, I tend to mumble a lot and speak too fast, and I especially struggle with consonants like T and D. I'm going to cut myself off there. I've made a lot of progress since then, and have learned a few things that may help you improve the clarity of your own speech. I'd like to show you the kinds of practice I tried and what I found worked for me. I tried many different kinds of speech practice. For most of my practice, I recorded myself and listened to it later to see what was and wasn't working. Often I would think I was speaking clearly, but when I listened to the recording, I realized I was still mumbling certain sounds. This helped me focus my practice. I started by reading various texts out loud. After a few days, I was able to speak more clearly, but my voice sounded really lifeless, and there were certain words like probably, another, and definitely that still tripped me up. Either I would mumble through them, or if I really slowed them down to enunciate each syllable, I would sound really unnatural. I decided to watch a few TV shows and try to repeat the characters' lines back, trying to mimic them as closely as possible. I started to realize that my biggest issue was actually my speaking rhythm. When the characters spoke, they had good rhythm and gave each syllable the proper amount of time. Whereas when I tried to copy them, I would unconsciously speed up certain syllables, resulting in rushed and unclear speech. I found when I stopped and intentionally smoothed out my rhythm, my enunciation improved automatically. These rhythm issues were distinct from simply talking too fast. I only had trouble with certain syllables in certain words. I don't think I would have noticed this if I hadn't tried to copy someone else's speaking. Just reading out loud and trying to speak clearly wasn't enough. I needed to hear examples of how I should be speaking. That being said, I was also simply talking too fast. Doing some research, I read that a comfortable speaking speed is between 130 and 170 words per minute. I decided to take several reading speed tests and speak them instead to find my speaking speed. Even when I intentionally tried to speak in a relaxed way, I was getting around 182 words per minute. This was probably the most surprising discovery of this whole experience. It turns out that a normal speaking speed feels too slow to me, at least while I'm speaking. I forced myself to speak around 150 words per minute, and while I was speaking, I felt like I was speaking too slowly, but when I listened back to the recording, it sounded fine, and was clearer than usual. I would have never noticed this if I hadn't taken a speed test and gotten an objective measurement of how fast I usually talk. Paying attention to the speed and rhythm of my speech, I was able to make some good progress. Recording the script for one of my videos, I found I was making a lot fewer mistakes and sounding more friendly and natural. These improvements were not carrying over to my social life, however. I found that when I was around my friends, I went back to speaking too quickly and mumbling. I realized that I had only been improving my formal reading voice, while my normal voice stayed the same. I think this is part of what makes improving your voice so difficult. You actually have multiple voices or accents, and improving one of them doesn't necessarily translate to the others. I needed to find a way to train my normal speaking voice when practicing by myself. I was able to coax myself to speak in my normal voice by pretending that I was talking to a friend. I would begin a sentence with, "Hey so-and-so," substituting a friend's name, and then talk as though I was talking to that friend. This worked surprisingly well. I also tried to be aware of my speech when I was actually with friends for even better practice, and I slowly started to see improvement. I also practiced speaking into the camera. Initially, I was just saying whatever random things came to mind, but later on I tried giving short speeches about specific topics. When I had to actually think about what I was saying, filler words like and like crept into my vocabulary. This hadn't been a problem when I was just saying whatever came to mind. I realized I also use those filler words a lot when I'm talking to friends. By paying attention and catching myself whenever I was about to use a filler word, I was able to reduce how often I said them quite a bit. Around day 20, I wanted to record a script for an important video I had been working on for a while. I did a few practice takes and was impressed with my progress. But when I decided to do the final recording, I suddenly got a little nervous. Knowing that this was going to be the final take, I started to pay really close attention to the sound of my voice in my headphones. The first few lines were good, but then I made a mistake. Knowing this was the final take, I got a bit more nervous and tried the line again, paying even closer attention to the sound of my voice. By the middle of the script, I was really wound up, and I was having to redo each line multiple times, and even the clear lines sounded robotic and anxious. I ended up completely throwing that take out. This really surprised me because the practice take that I didn't record had been so good. This showed me that my emotional state can significantly impact my speech. I realized that I have similar speaking troubles when I'm in a group of new people, or when I'm afraid I'm going to be interrupted. I was able to go back a few days later and record the script again. That time I didn't listen to the sound of my own voice, I just focused on having good rhythm and speaking slowly. That take went much better, and I got a clear recording with only a few redos. Managing nervousness is a whole separate topic, but don't beat yourself up if your speech gets worse when you're nervous. It might feel like your practice isn't working, but if you can take a break and calm down, your speech should go back to normal. I also found that talking with my hands made it easier to maintain a smooth rhythm. By attaching my speaking rhythm to my hands, I was able to use my hands' physical inertia to slow down the syllables that I would usually speak too quickly. And that's pretty much it. My key takeaway from this experience is that every type of speech is different. Improving your formal speech reading by yourself is not necessarily going to improve your casual speech talking with friends. If there's a certain type of speech you would most like to improve, try to simulate it as closely as possible in your practice. And whatever kind of practice you choose, try to provide yourself with as much feedback as possible. Recording your speech and listening back to it is the best way to find out what you need to work on. Comparing your speech to recordings of people whose voices you like is also really useful. Listening to yourself can show you what you're doing wrong, while listening to others can show you what you should be doing instead. Finally, you may struggle with enunciation, but before you focus on that, check to see if your speaking rhythm and speed are where they should be. Your enunciation might fix itself. Improving your speech is not as straightforward as it might seem, but with the right kind of focused practice, it's definitely possible. Consistent practice is also important. The first few days, I didn't know what I was doing, but I kept going and paid attention to what was and wasn't working until I figured out what I needed to do to improve. I highly recommend giving it a try. The results may surprise you. If you found this video helpful, consider giving it a like. Thanks for watching.